Well, happy Friday to you all. Tesla just dropped some huge news. And although it should be really good news, in my opinion, it's not the greatest. And we're going to dive into that here in just a moment because Tesla just released the rear-wheel drive Cybertruck, which has been all this time highly anticipated because it is the most cost-effective option for the Cybertruck. There's a lot on the line here, but there's a lot of details that we now have, which is very important in understanding what is this rear-wheel drive going to have. For so much time now, we've been talking about what are they going to take out of this thing and still retain the DNA of Cybertruck. We now have all of those answers. So with that, let's dive over here. I want to show you not just the order page, when we should be able to expect this, what kind of range we're talking about, but also what's the difference between this and the all-wheel drive? Because guess what? Once again, pricing is not what we expected. All right, so here we are over on Tesla's website. And as you can see, we now have the long range Cybertruck. That is what the quote rear wheel drive will be. This is indeed a rear wheel drive Cybertruck. So one motor, but it's long range, which is not what we expected. So this thing actually comes standard with estimated EPA range of 350 miles. And based on the recent range test I did with my Cybertruck, I think that's probably going to be achievable. Now, there are some big differences here between this new variant and the all-wheel drive that we've had for all this time. So let's start with the basics. 350 miles of range. Your towing capacity actually drops all the way down to 7,500 pounds. And there's a very good reason for that, which we'll dive into soon. 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds instead of 4.1, and a starting price of $69,990. Now, when Tesla finally released the Cybertruck, we knew that we had these new prices, $99,990 for the Cyberbeast and $79,990 for the all-wheel drive. But the rear-wheel drive was going to come at $60,990. So here we are, $9,000 more expensive than what was announced at that same time, which is super frustrating. The good news is we still have the tax credit here. So $7,500, no impact on qualification for that tax credit. That is a big deal. But rather than being close to the $55,000 range with that tax credit, we're now at $62,500. So still a pretty big chunk of money. But Tesla did some things with range specifically that helped to entice this new higher price. But now we can actually see this new tool here, compare models. This is actually really cool. It gives you a side-by-side of all three options. And they've actually labeled these based on what kind of a driver you are: endurance hauler, maximum lifestyle adventure, or unreal performance. So I guess some fun marketing names there for you. But there's your range listed out based on model. And now because of that higher range with the same battery pack, your charging is technically faster because although the battery will charge at the same speed, you will get more real-world range per minute of charging in that 15-minute time frame. But towing has been reduced to 7,500 pounds. This is 3,500 pound loss in towing capability, but it doesn't just end there. Our payload is also down to 2006. I am glad to see it over 2,000 pounds. That's still incredible payload for this category of truck, but that is quite a drop from the all-wheel drive at 2,500 pounds. In addition, that is when you equip this with the Cyber Wheel. So the Cyber Wheel and the tire put on that Cyber Wheel are rated for that maximum payload. For the powertrain, we now have a single motor rear wheel drive with mechanical rear locking differentials. This was one of the things we were thinking was going to disappear with this cheaper model. Indeed, it is still here, which is great. So the same rear diff lockers, fantastic, really good for off-roading. 0 to 60. And then on the interior, here's some of the differences here. Now we have textile seats. This is fabric interior. You can only get it in tactical gray. The front seats are heated, and that is it. There's no heated seats in the back. Also, we don't have ventilated seats in the front, so you lose that. Also, the rest of it still have the second row fold-up seats, but we now have this quote standard console, and I'll tell you what that's all about here momentarily. We also lose that rear screen, so only the normal front screen. The sound system has been reduced substantially to a 7-speaker system, and on the exterior and bed, we now have what they're calling a standard bed, upgradable with soft tonneau. This thing does not have the vault, so there's no cover over the bed that retracts. You can actually upgrade, and I'll show you that here momentarily, the headlamps without signature lamps rather than with signature lamps. I don't know exactly what that is specifically, but there's a difference in the headlights. In addition, we also have now standard bed lamps versus the premium bed lamps, and we're going to go basically from that LED strip to something else, and standard tail lamps instead of the premium tail lamps. So again, a difference here as well. And then I also noticed L tracks are now gone. So that's kind of unfortunate. So you lose a lot of the utility in the bed of the truck here, but it doesn't just stop there, because on the power outlets, there are now no longer power outlets in the bed, but also there are two 120 volt plugs on the inside of the truck. Those are not present in this new variant of Cybertruck. It does, however, support this bi-directional charging capability. So with a mobile charger and an outlet adapter, you can actually hook up to 120 volts straight from the charge port, which is kind of cool, I suppose. We have lost the air suspension. You now have a coil spring suspension, which is so unfortunate. And that just means you're not going to be able to adjust the ride height on the go or while you're on the trails. You're at a static height for the entire time that you are driving. You cannot adjust that. Now, I'm sure the ride will be okay, but it will not be anything like the butter smooth ride that the air suspension we have today. Everything else is technically the same, but let's take a look here a little bit closer. So other than the range, the towing capacity in 0 to 60, here's what we're looking at for this soft tonneau cover. So check this out. So for $750 and you can get this soft tonneau. But what's really interesting about this, it says right here, this will increase your range by 12 miles. So if you equip this, you'll actually be 362 miles of rated range, which is a lot. That is really good range. That is a great number. So this is a no-brainer if you're going with this configuration to get the soft tonneau cover. You will not be able to step on this. This is not nearly as secure as the Vault, obviously, but this is a good alternative, I suppose, if you can't have the Vault. It also notes that these will begin shipping in June, which I believe is the same time frame that we're looking at for this new variant of the Cybertruck anyways. So about the same time these start shipping, you can get the soft tonneau cover. Interestingly enough, right here, we now have this towing class all highlighted out. And although it does help to highlight the difference, it makes me wonder if there's something coming in the future where adding a tow package might not even come standard on the Cybertruck. So interesting how this now shows up. So perhaps the $60,000 Cybertruck isn't dead yet, but that's pure speculation, of course. We do have a closer look at these new wheels. Now, these are 18 instead of 20, and you can see it's got this little mini hubcap on it, and that is par for the course for everything they've stripped out of this truck. But without that little cap on there, you can see some circles here. I believe this looks like pretty much the equivalent of Steely's, which I think personally is really cool. I think that'll actually look really good without this cover on it. That's going to be really interesting to see what we're looking at under here. If you step up to the 20-inch Cyber wheels, your range drops down to 331 miles. You actually lose almost 20 miles of range going from these 18s to the Cyber wheels. But as you can see, these are still 35-inch massive tires, and that is pretty awesome. They are all-season tires. This should be good in most conditions, probably a lot more efficient than our all-terrain tires. So looking at the inside, you can get just a glimpse on the side of the seat. There's that textile material. It's cloth interior, basically, and it's looks like it's surrounded by a faux leather, but it's just a fabric basically on the inside, much like what we saw launched in Mexico. It still appears to have the faux suede headliner, which is nice. You still have the ambient lights, which is nice. You have the tactical gray interior, so door cards, dashboard, that's all the same. Still the same steering wheel. Generally speaking, the same center console. So you still have your two chargers here. This is all visually the same. You just don't have a 120 in the back and a 120 on the inside of this. And then, of course, this is all just black plastic rather than some brushed aluminum or a nicer look there. Of course, you can still get full self-driving. And then we have our new charging setup here. So a universal home charger is being suggested for this because of the ability to do bidirectional charging with the Cybertruck. And the mobile charger is now 300 and it comes with a couple of adapters. And this will allow you to add another adapter to it that will allow you to plug in two 120s to that charge port. You can also now order universal home charger and gateway right here on the order page, which is pretty cool. This does not include installation, to my understanding. This is just the hardware, but that is pretty cool that you can do this. So you can, according to Tesla, power your home off-grid for up to 3 days with Cybertruck. And that's actually not far from the truth. There's actually been a couple of cases where people have run their entire home for multiple days beyond 3. So you have 123-ish kilowatt hour battery pack under this thing. How many kilowatt hours do you use in your house a day? Now put yourself in an emergency when you're not running everything. You could probably get well over a week of power straight out of the truck. And then here is the mobile charger and outlet adapter. So you can kind of see here in the corner, this is that adapter to get you to the 120, which is pretty cool. So basically, instead of this plugging into the wall, now this is actually going to be what you plug into with your accessories, and you use the other side pulling from the truck. So that's pretty neat. And that is pretty much the setup here. You're still tax credit eligible, which is important. And we are looking at June to July for first deliveries. Now, we're going to take a little bit deeper look here in comparing this to the all-wheel drive. So this is only a $10,000 savings. It is $10,000 though, so that is a good thing, but is it worth $10,000 savings? Of course, we have more miles of range. We have 25 at minimum more miles of rated range. And if you have the Cyber wheels on the all-wheel drive, I mean, that just continues to expand. And of course, you can get up to 362 with the soft tonneau cover. 0 to 60 does go down 6.2 seconds, which is still plenty. Don't worry about that acceleration at all. That's still plenty of speed. Towing, though, 3,500 pounds less, 7,500 versus 11,000. Payload down by almost 500 pounds when equipped with the Cyber wheels. And no rear screen. We have cloth interior. No air suspension is a huge loss. Standard bed lights, tail lights, and headlights. Have no bed or interior outlets. That 120 in the inside, two 120s on the inside, and then two 120s in the bed plus the 240 that was in the bed. That is no longer present. No vault, so you can add that soft tonneau cover for $750, but you cannot have a retractable vault cover any longer. 7-speaker stereo versus 15. Heated seats only, and it's only the front seats. 18-inch wheels instead of the standard 20s, and a weight difference of about 500 pounds. So 6,100 versus 6,600 pounds. So here's the deal. This thing was supposed to be about $18,000 less than the all-wheel drive version. And we knew that came with some compromises. We were wondering about which of these features wouldn't be included. $18,000 is a lot of money. That would have put this thing squarely in the sub $55,000 price point. That would have been a massively popular price point for a full-size truck. Unfortunately, they just weren't able to deliver something they felt comfortable delivering at that price point for whatever reason. And I know that the folks at Tesla worked very hard to get this to where it is today. It's just not what I certainly was expecting. About $9,000 more expensive than what I was anticipating seeing. Of course, it is nice that you do get more range, but you lose a ton of equipment for $10,000. So thinking of that long list of everything that's been cut out of this for $10,000, to me, this feels more like a play of justifying the all-wheel drive than it is about selling a cheaper model. That's just my opinion, of course, but I think there's other signs here that suggest that maybe that $60,000 Cybertruck isn't dead just yet. Of course, pure speculation. I have no details to suggest that is the case, but this doesn't make sense otherwise, at least to me. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. I'm very conflicted in my feelings about this whole situation, but I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. I thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to catch you on the next one.